Welcome to this Bible study on the biblical creation. This is session 3, the Flat Earth Model. So in the first session, talked about exposing the false cosmology. Hopefully you did a little research there, saw that people can see further than we're supposed to on a globe. Then in the second session, we looked at the modern mythology, why the people that present the globe cosmology are lying in many areas, and we're really in a mythology. Hopefully your interest has been piqued there. So in this session, we're going to talk about the flat earth model, and then in the remaining sessions, we'll really get into the scriptures in the Bible. So as I've said before, you have passively believed the lie. Now you must actively find the flaws in it. Hopefully you've been doing that. And you cannot objectively understand the scriptures with that mental programming. So that will really come into play in the next session. So first, in this session, the topics are the flat earth basics, the flat earth maps and logos, basically how the sun and moon work. What does flying mean on a flat earth? That includes sailing. And the tactic of disinformation. So only some principles are defined here. You can go and research this and learn a lot more. Warning for this session, there are very few scriptures, which means there's mostly a presentation of information and argument. And then also warning that the biblical earth is not the same as flat earth. So what I'm going to present here concerning the flat earth is interesting. Some of it is relevant to the biblical earth, but not everything that you'll find out there on the flat earth is really what the Bible teaches. So let's look at some flat earth basics. So if the earth is flat, then it is either an infinite plane or a finite plane with an edge. Now, while some believe the earth is infinite, this doesn't align with the biblical view. There is an edge, but it can never be reached since no one can get very far past the ice barrier. So over here on the right, you see the myth, why it's suggested to be a myth. You'll fall off the edge. So that's why it's mocked. But in the bottom is possibly the truth, where there's a barrier that no one can go past. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the flat earth is a disk, it's a circle. The part of the earth that we can reach is a disk, and then beyond that, it's not clear what is there. The North Pole is at the center, and Antarctica is the boundary. So there is no flat South Pole, You will hear that people have been to the South Pole, and we know where it is, and if you read a lot of other information on the web, that's essentially just a story. If you think of a compass, the compass points north. It doesn't point south. So, is there a place where you can say it's the South Pole? Perhaps not. So, in the flat Earth model, though, far from the center, it's cold and dark. So, if you go far enough beyond Antarctica, whatever that may be, eventually the sun will not reach there, and it will be perpetual darkness. And I do not believe anybody has ever gone that far. There's lots of other issues like cold. So now let's take a look at a movie that talks about Antarctica and the edge.
So where is the edge?
Who's to say that there is an edge, and why assume there is one? Is it because when we are introduced to the idea of a flat earth, it's always depicted like this? In the currently most accepted model, Antarctica is not a continent, but a 360-degree landmass made up of ice that holds the oceans within. When we look at a Gleason's map, from 1892 that states at the top that it's scientifically and practically correct, as is. We see this Antarctic ice rim. The Gleason's map is basically an azimuthal equidistant projection, which can be traced back to the year 1000. The AE map is also an official map of the United States Geological Survey, the USGS, and the official logo for the United Nations. The oldest known globe in the world is from 1492. This is something you need to keep in mind because many people argue that the azimuthal equidistant map is just a flattened out version of the globe, when in fact the globe is just a rounded version of this true world flat map. If the flat map came first and it has the ability to convert into a globe without any problems whatsoever, then that should tell you a little bit about how this globe deception was achieved. Now, back to if there is an edge or not. There is no proof that there is an edge past the Antarctic ice wall, but it is speculated by many that perhaps the plane that we live on is either extremely expansive or it's possibly endless. In these two scenarios, it would be logically assumed that more land is being hidden from the general public.
So concerning latitude and longitude, these are similar to what you've been taught on a globe. However, the southern latitudes get wider rather than narrower. And why you might think that that's a big problem, if you really study the land masses, very little of them are in the southern hemisphere, as they call it, or in the southern latitudes. So while there are some land masses there aren't many, and most of your population is in the north. We'll talk a little bit more about those wider latitudes, or I guess the longitudes are wider, not the latitudes. Now, the directions north, east, south, and west are similar as well. North is to the center, south is everywhere to the extreme, and then east and west are kind of what you would think, and we'll see more about that. So you can circumnavigate east or west, but not north or south. You can go over the North Pole, and then you'll be going south again, but you can't go over the South Pole because there isn't one. So now we'll look at a movie that talks a little bit more about circumnavigation.
How is circumnavigation possible on a flat Earth?
Very easily. You can travel east and west directions to ultimately end up right back where you started. The face of the Earth looks similar to that of a clock. In fact, clocks were most likely designed after the true appearance of our world. If you follow a compass east for long enough, you'll make a full circuit. Same thing if you travel west long enough. As we've already gone over, the flat Earth map that was around before globes were easily converts to a globe, so everything you believe you are doing on a globe is actually taking place on a flat Earth.
Now we'll look at some flat Earth maps and logos. So here is one map called the Gleason map, and you can find that on the internet. You can download the picture of it and take a look at what it all says. I'm not going to go into what's on it here. And then also on the slide is what is called the air map, which talks about, I think, shipping and flying routes. I'm not sure what date this was. It's quite some time ago. But again, it presents it all as a kind of a flat Earth. So this isn't a new idea. People say, oh, this just came up recently. No, it's the heliocentric model in the globe that's recent. So a little cartoon fun. Here is a cartoon, and in a sense, it's really mocking the flat Earth. And we'll talk a little bit about the Flat Earth Society and what's wrong with it. And then someone, I don't know if they actually made one of these, but I would love to have a flat Earth, I don't know, you can't call it a globe, but a flat Earth stand. I'm not sure what you would name that. I think it might be written on the edge of the little disc there, what it's called. But anyway, that's for fun. Now, if you look at the United Nations logos, the United Nations logo itself is the bigger one, and it's a flat Earth. And if you look at the rest of the logos, 6 of them are flat, and 2 of them are globes. So the flat Earth ones are the World Meteorological Organization. Sorry that I can't say that. The International Maritime Organization, the World Health Organization, UNIDO, I guess. I don't know how you say that, what that stands for. And then ICAO, which is an abbreviation for something. And then the 2 that are globes are UNICEF and the International Monetary Fund. So kind of interesting that you find these flat Earth logos in the world. Now we'll talk a little bit about the sun and the moon. So how does the sun rise and set? In Ecclesiastes 1, verses 4-7, it says, "One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again." So really these scriptures are attesting to the vanities of life, but they also state that the sun rises and goes down. We'll talk about that. The sun returns to where it previously rose, and it's the sun that moves. And of course, your, weak Christian or false Christian says, well, it's a relative description. It's not really the sun that's moving, but sorry, that's not what the Bible says. So you can twist it to say something else, but the Bible says that the sun is the thing that moves. And we'll see in the next session that there are many scriptures that say the earth does not move, and of course they'll twist that as well. So the sun rises and sets according to perspective. So it, as we see it going to the horizon, it's going down. Of course, when it's coming up, it's coming from the horizon, and it gives us that appearance of rising and setting. It's not a deception. That's the way it looks. So now we'll look at a movie that goes into this further called Where Does the Sun Go?
Where does the sun go if the earth is flat?
Well, the sun neither rises nor sets, but travels in a clockwise circuit from east to west, and only appears to rise and set due to perspective. The sun disappears at the vanishing point of human perspective on the horizon where the ground meets the sky, and since the sun is not 93 million miles away, I repeat, not 93 million miles away, but much closer and smaller, the light emanating from the sun only illuminates about half of the flat plane at once as it makes its daily journey.
So how do the sun and moon move on the flat Earth? They travel in a spiral above the Earth. The moon is slightly slower, so they will catch up and be in the same relative location at certain times, and then they'll get to opposite sides and all the phases in between, so to speak. The spiral ranges from the Tropic of Cancer, as we call it, to the Tropic of Capricorn. So it takes 6 months to spiral out, and it takes 6 months to spiral in, and that just repeats. And from this spiraling movement, you get the seasons. So when the sun is towards one of these circles, towards the north, you'll have summer in the north. And when it spirals out to the outer circle, you'll have summer in the south and winter in the north. And it's that simple as to how the seasons occur. It also gives you all the phases of the moon, and it accounts for what we see. Now, the heliocentric model explains the seasons by a tilted Earth and the Earth moving around the sun. It's actually further from the sun in the northern hemisphere's summer and closer to the sun in the southern hemisphere's summer, and that's because it's supposedly traveling in an ellipse, and the sun is at one foci, or one focus. And while that's, it sounds like they've explained it, that's really not a very good explanation. So we'll see some more on that. So first, let's watch a movie on what causes the seasons, and then we'll come back to that.
What about the seasons?
The sun is close and small, and it circles around and above the flat Earth in a spiral pattern on the Tropic of Cancer in the northern summer months, and then down in the Tropic of Capricorn in the northern winter months. So when the sun is further away from the North Pole, right, the center of the flat Earth, it's winter in the north and summer in the south. Since the sun is smaller than we are told and closer, it makes much more sense that we experience seasons in the first place. If the sun was 93 million miles away and had a radius of over 400,000 miles, we would hardly experience temperature fluctuation as we do.
So here's basically a presentation of what the heliocentric model is trying to teach us. If you look at the graphic, you're going to really get the story. So if the Earth is tilted up at the top, the heat bands should be parallel to the rays, not tilted with the Earth. So like on the right side at the top, that's how the band should look, but when the Earth is tilted, they should not tilt with it. Now, if you look at the flat Earth model and the temperature data there, it makes sense. It lines up with how the sun's moving and the summer and the winter and all of that. So look at it, think about it. You don't need this tilt. The tilt doesn't really explain the seasons, but we think the Earth's a globe and it's traveling around the sun, and that must be it, but it's not. So as I've said in another study, this tilt of 23.4 degrees, I know I had the number wrong before, but that allows you to hide the 66.6 the Masons like to use, trying to be the number of the beast, although it's got a decimal in it. And again, how do they measure this angle? It's all nonsense. Now, time zones work the way you would think. They're determined by the position of the sun over the Earth, and it's going around and giving you the different times of day. And at noon it will be relatively overhead, and you'll have a sunrise and a sunset. Now, as I said before, the sun and the moon travel faster in the southern longitudes, or in the southern latitudes, because the longitude lines are further apart. So this will make the south colder than the north because the sun is moving faster and it's not staying over, let's say, the land longer than in the north, and so it's not heating it up as much. And so if you go and look at temperature data from the north and the south, you'll find that it's typically much colder in the southern, let me say it right, the southern latitudes compared to the northern latitudes. So something you have to go research. There are some papers that talk about that. And it doesn't make sense on a globe why the south should be colder than the north. Now, maybe they'll argue, well, there's more ocean. But I don't know, that makes the ocean kind of stronger than the sun, I guess. So something else that's interesting, you can have an Arctic day without night, and this is a time-lapse picture of the sun traveling hour to hour, and it never sets. But Antarctica cannot do that. And I'm sure you'll have somebody say, oh yes, the Antarctic, and the South Pole experiences the same day without end, in what their summer is. But others have testified that there is never a time when you have perpetual light down at the very southernmost latitudes. So what about the size and distance of the sun and moon from the earth? The sun and moon appear to be the same size because they are. It's not a matter of, well, the sun's much bigger, but it's much further away, and therefore, from perspective, they appear to be the same size. They are the same size. Now, one I think is slightly closer than the other because the moon can block the sun out. Now, since they're smaller than the Earth, they have to be a lot closer. And some people have speculated on distances. I'm not going to bother with that. And it's on the order of a few thousand miles. The sun is not bigger than the Earth. It's a smaller disk that goes around above it. So this is why you can see sun rays like those pictured, and you can observe these yourself. But I will say be careful in what you claim, because you are witnessing something that's miles and miles up, and these clouds are huge, and while you're seeing the rays like you're seeing here, it's really hard to state emphatically exactly where the sun is, how close it is, and things like that. But people have tried measuring and making statements, so just be careful of that. But I think I don't think your eyes are deceiving you. I think you're seeing the sun rays. They travel straight, and yes, there can be some refraction, but it can't be doing the things that we're seeing if it's 93 million miles away. So something that you can personally observe, and people don't really pay attention to it. So now let's talk about flying on the flat Earth. So if you go and look at some flight paths on different airlines, it doesn't really matter which ones, you will see some really strange places to go and how you get there. So in this example, you're going from Australia to the United States, and then you're going down to South America. What you're not doing is flying from Australia to South America. Now, if you look at it on a flat Earth map, it makes sense to fly to the United States because it's on the way. It's in the flight path, so to speak, of your final destination. Now, you have to be careful, and I've researched this. There are people that claim I flew directly from Australia to South America, and it only took a certain number of hours. I couldn't have flown across a flat Earth to get there. And they're basically saying that I've proven that the Earth is a globe. And I'd say, well, if that's true, then you're right. But I don't know that that's true. You will find some people claim they've tried getting these flights. They get canceled. They're not real. They're not flying. And then other people say, no, I've flown on one. And this is where you have to wonder your source of information and the truth of it all. So this one, while it should be possible to make this observation personally, it may be that you can't. I don't know. And I don't trust the people that I'm reading about or hearing from on the internet in order to make a decision based on it. So my feeling is there isn't a globe, there isn't a real flight. They're lying, but can't prove that. So here's another example, same thing. You fly from Johannesburg up to Dubai and then over to Perth. Kind of out of the way, isn't it? But not on the flat Earth map. It's kind of on the way. And you'll find that a lot of flights go through Dubai in the Middle East because they're on the way between your southern latitude countries. So something you can do for fun, you can go onto planefinder.net. I'm sure there are other ones. They track the flights. You get a lot of crazy data. You can plot some of these paths. You'll find that the ones going over the North Pole or around the North Pole supposedly are you're able to draw them and see them. When you get around in the southern hemisphere, you'll find all kinds of wacky things like the paths don't plot. They turn off their GPS, if that's the right term. You can go and read about some of that stuff. I think they're getting smarter and they're faking some of the stuff they're presenting in order to keep the lie going. Again, you'll find these flights that fly near the South Pole, if there's such a thing, and they will track those now, whereas a few years ago, when I looked, I never would see these flights. They wouldn't track. So I think they're wising up to people who are paying attention, and so they may be supplementing the real flights with false data. I can't prove that, but just because we see something on the screen, I don't know, is it real? So you can go and poke around on those. There's some really weird things that you can discover about where these planes are going to and coming from. It is a little frustrating because there are so many flights. You can't always get what you want to look at. Now we'll talk about the tactic of disinformation. So besides the overwhelming amount of information on heliocentrism, which I call propaganda, there are two elements working against the flat earth model. One is the true supporters who are naive, and two, the false supporters who mock it. So you do have some people that believe in the flat earth, but they don't really know what they're talking about, and then they say stupid things, either about the flat earth or about the globe earth, and then they look dumb, and so people go, you're an idiot, and so is the thing you believe in. And then you have some people who pretend to support the flat earth, and they are presenting stupid explanations on purpose so that people will go, oh, your flat earth is dumb, I don't want to follow it. So either way, it's hurting the flat earth movement or system. So as I said, naive supporters make claims in ignorance of either or both models. They'll try to explain this doesn't work on a globe, and they don't understand the explanation on the globe, and so they're easily shown to be wrong, therefore the flat earth is wrong. And it doesn't work like that. As I said, the false supporters provide dumb explanations so others will quickly turn away from the model. And if you go to the Flat Earth Society site and you read what they write, that site is full of false supporters. And they say all kinds of dumb things. I think they're saying it on purpose in order to provide disinformation. So one of the examples is they explain the force of gravity by not being the mass of the Earth. It is the result of the Earth moving upward at a speed equivalent to the force of gravity. So my thought is, well, that's just stupid. That's not why things fall to the Earth. So again, you give a dumb explanation, people they think, well, that's so stupid, I'm not even going to continue researching this. So, but there are some people, they don't believe in God, and they think, well, this is how it happens, because there's no God to make things fall. It's what made the earth go up? Well, I can't explain that, and that's the problem that you have. So here's a good example of mocking due to bad explanation. So day and night are typically explained as the sun shining as a spotlight, and I think one of the videos even says that. And of course, right away you go, well, that doesn't really explain, what we're seeing. So in these illustrations on the right, it shows that less than half of the earth is lit. So of course, people are going to say, see, this doesn't work, so it's got to be a globe. So, as I said, a skeptic sees this incomplete explanation, he quickly rejects the model. But there's a much better explanation, and we'll go and look at that right now. There is some, I'll say, just strange music that is associated with the video, and you'll just have to tolerate that and pay attention to what is presented in the subtitles.
You probably know neon for its use in lighted signs, but in fact, all of the noble gases glow when they are bombarded with electrons.
I remember when I lost my mind. There's something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have it so much space. Ooh. And when you're out there without care, was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough. Just knew too much. That made me crazy. That made me crazy. That made me Love that you have in time of your life. Think twice. It's my only advice. Come on now. Who do you think you are? Ah, bless your soul. You really think you're in control? Well, I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. Just like me. My heroes had the heart to lose their lives out on a limb. Oh, remember, thinking be like. Ever since I was little, ever since I was little, I looked like fun. No coincidence I've come. And I'll die when I'm done. But maybe I'm crazy.
So, and as an example of naive mocking, you'll have people presenting this picture on the right, and they'll say, a compass doesn't work on a globe. How can it point north? It's got to point through the earth. But they don't understand the explanation of how a magnetic system or magnetic field is supposed to work on a globe. And if what they're saying is true, and I guess it's not, then this is how a compass would work. So, they're mocking the globe by not addressing the explanation for how something works, and they say it doesn't work. And of course, somebody presents the picture on the lower left, and they say, "See, this is how it works. You're an idiot. The flat Earth is wrong." So you have to be prepared for that as you research. There's so much stupidity going on, and not much intelligent presentation of science or observation and theory. Then you get stuff like this. So I read where someone was mocking the flat Earth because of Orlando Ferguson, and when I researched that, I found this picture, and I thought, you've got an ice cream bowl as your flat Earth model. He does have the 4 angels holding back the 4 winds, I guess. So I guess he's trying to put the Bible into it, but why he has drawn this, I have no idea. So of course, someone sees this and they go, well, "This is lame. It's like a kind of a sine wave sweeping out a volume," but I don't know. Thanks. Don't need that kind of help. And then you get this one here, another example of "I don't want your help." And this map proposes numerous continents beyond Antarctica. So the outermost circle, I guess, would be Antarctica, and then you have all these giant land masses, as big as Africa, supposedly out there. And my comment would be, they're in perpetual darkness and cold. How do you know? So again, people put stupid things out like this. I don't know where this came from. So hopefully you understand a few of the flat Earth basics. You can go out and read and research more. Be prepared for the frustration. That's what I'm about to say here. Just remember, the biblical Earth and the flat Earth are not the same. So if you see people arguing over Scripture, don't get too hung up on that, because the flat Earth isn't exactly what the Bible teaches. It's not an infinite plane, as an example. It doesn't move up at the speed of gravity, because the Bible says the Earth doesn't move. Okay, so if you're going to research this, you just have to be prepared for frustration and ridicule, and just try to filter through that and get the basics. And then when you read the Scriptures, you can have that model in mind rather than the globe, because to me the globe just gives you confusion as you consider the Scriptures. So stay tuned for the future sessions. Thank you.